Thank you to our amazing premier partner, Pinata. Check out all the amazing tools they have for devs creating frames on Farcaster at pinata.cloud. And thank you also to our CLP today, our conversation liquidity patron, Bolide. Bolide is a smart mobile app that makes trading meme coins super easy for everyone. To use Bolide, you can log in with your email address thanks to its integration with Privy. Plus, there are no gas fees since it's a smart wallet with account abstraction. Currently available for iOS. Check out the Bolide channel, Bolide, on Warpcast. And now on to the show. And GM Farcaster. It is Tuesday, April 9th, and you are here with Nanish Prof and Adrienne and a very special guest, Jacek, the dev behind Degen, and now the dev behind Degen Chain and the dev behind Degen the Empire. I don't know what we're calling it now. All things Degen. Welcome, Jacek. How are you this morning?
Hey, doing pretty good. Yeah, everything's going great.
It's amazing. I have to ask you something because I just noticed this behind you. That's a really cool. It almost looks like a base paint thing.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
really?
It's base paint 169. So I think in January the community on Telegram they kind of gathered together and somebody initiated a theme, Degen theme day, and yeah, I think we got like tons of votes for the Degen theme, and then this was created, this masterpiece over here, and I printed it out. So they actually crushed it a little bit during the. I think they were just like throwing it around, but it looks fine now.
It's amazing. I just noticed it. I've been sitting here talking to you for a few minutes as we were getting ready, and I didn't even notice. And then I went, I think that's from base paint, and I think I contributed to that one.
You probably did.
I usually do. I haven't done one in a while, but I've often been on there. So I probably at some point, and they probably got hidden through some noggles on there. I guarantee you some nouns classes were hidden on there at some point. That's amazing. And so we talked with you January 23rd. I had to go back and look at our old episode we did with you. And it was before tipping started. If you can even imagine that there was a time before Degen tipping, Adrienne, can you believe it? Way back in the Stone Ages of January, like 3 months ago, not even. Yeah, we're gonna call that before Degen. I don't know what we call it.
The before times.
The before times. The before times. But it's amazing. Like, so when we were talking then, I listened back yesterday and I was like, wow. You were just, the way you were describing tipping was a different way to do the next airdrop. You're like, I have this idea I think I want to play around with, and a different way to put it in the community's hands. And for those who may not be familiar, maybe they just got on Farcaster, they don't really know what's going on. Can you talk about like the origins of Degen? What made you create this meme coin, and then talk about like tipping and how that process came about? And let's start there, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I guess like in November, I kind of quit my job, or late October, somewhere around there. And then December, I was going to play around with a different idea, which was going to be channels.fun, kind of like a cross between subreddits and friend tech, and kind of like doing that whole social fi thing on channels. But then I saw basically in the Degen channel on Farcaster that people were creating tokens, and these tokens were kind of blowing up. So I was like, all right, well, this seems like there's demand here. So rather than create this thing, which is going to be kind of difficult to like generate that demand, might be a little bit easier to just try something over here that people really want. And yeah, so I think I just posted a cast with a basic promise of, I'll create a token that's fairly distributed. I framed it in some sort of way, and then I got a bunch of different likes. And after that, I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. So I just basically spent like day and night working on it for 2 weeks. Built the leaderboard, which was based off like your likes and mentions and things like that. And so that was the initial kind of thing. And then January 8th was, I think, the official airdrop date for airdrop 1. And yeah, and so that generated like just a lot of excitement. So I was like, wow, like things are really happening here. And then I was thinking, well, now what can I do with this to kind of move this forward? And I think my initial idea was actually to kind of build like a game. So something along the lines of Pearl, which is like a frame, like a Degen frame. If people have been on Farcaster, they've probably seen it. If they've been in the Degen world, so it's kind of like yeah. I was thinking maybe that would make a little bit of sense. But then I was going down like a list of different ideas I had with my friend Jay from ethxy.com. And basically down at the bottom of the list, it was pretty much tipping. And he kind of like told me, well, you know, stop everything. Like, let's go back to this idea you have over here. And he was kind of like, you know, what's kind of like the low effort kind of like dev time, like low effort task you could do, but highest impact. And so it kind of seemed like the tipping was like, that was basically that. It wouldn't take me too much time to code it up. And just could release it like the next day, basically. So yeah, so I wasn't initially thinking as tipping as like the way to do things. And actually, I even thought of tipping more along the lines of maybe like Dogecoin bot or something on Reddit, which was like a big bot where people would actually have to deposit their funds. But then I was like, well, I'm trying to distribute, and things kind of evolved, and so yeah, I was in the idea phase for like for a little bit. And then the actual implementation was quick, and that now we have tipping and yeah, all the fun that goes with tipping. So spam, farmers, but also the good side of like the cool distribution mechanism, the signaling, which is basically popular OGs and popular people on Farcaster usually have higher allowances, but also people who just have like really great posts this week. And then they can go ahead and signal on other people who they think are doing a good job. And then those people will be highlighted in the leaderboard, and probably can do a lot with that as well. So yeah, that's where we're at now. And of course, there's the Degen L3, which was released like 10 or 11 days ago, I think. Not exactly sure, but and yeah, and that kind of, I wasn't sure if that was going to kind of take off. I kind of thought it was going to be sort of like slow. Probably we need to like incentivize developers and like bring tooling, all these kind of things before like people actually want to bridge and actually use the chain. So I thought it was going to be much slower, maybe like months and months of like kind of like building up a whole like ecosystem. But it turns out in like 2 days, like $30 million worth of Degen was bridged. So yeah, totally insane. And like people are just building on it like crazy, and I haven't even had the time to really like pick out or like even check out a lot of the cool apps on there, which is something I intend to do because we've just launched Deploy on Degen Week. That's going to start next week, but people are kind of signing up.
What? Wait, what? I missed that one.
Yeah, so
what is that? So you're jumping so far ahead, but keep going. Yeah. What is Deploy on Degen Week?
We're going to come back to the beginning, right? And get to ask all the questions.
We're going to circle around, but I want to know. But since you mentioned it, now you can't leave us hanging. So, what is Deploy on Degen Week? Let's talk about that.
So it's happening next week, starting Monday. Syndicate has really been leading the charge on a lot of like these initiatives. So basically there's a cast out, and there's also a tweet somewhere from both myself and from Syndicate. And you can sign up if you're if you're a developer. Yeah, I think I just put it out yesterday because we just kind of did it. Yeah. Every day something's happening. And yeah, we really want to incentivize builders to build. So there's 10 million Degen that we're giving, and then there's about 500,000 coming from One Confirmation as well as from Syndicate. So they're all giving 250,000 Degen. And yeah, I think it's a cool way for builders to kind of put their product in front of Seed Club, in front of One Confirmation, as well as Syndicate to kind of take a look at it and kind of get some feedback, but also to just deploy something cool, maybe get some grant money from the pool. And yeah, that'll take about a week. Some people can kind of sign up right now. And yeah, so yeah.
All right, so that's a lot. So I'm gonna just step back really quick to tipping and start there. And then we're going to move forward to Degen Chain and all that too. And also everything that's happened in between. But going back to like January and tipping, the only tipping that was happening at that point, or the only kind of similar thing, was warps. And you can't see that. Like, you can personally see if you've been tipped, you know, if you've tipped somebody else, but it's not public. And then you have this whole new meta of sort of rewarding in public and tipping in public, which you kind of pioneered that. And now we see it happening with Enjoy, for example, on Zora, where you can tip your, you know, an allowance, same kind of thing. It's an allowance. It's not coming from your own wallet for minting. And then you see other implementations of that now happening with people creating cast actions where you could tip all kinds of things. So it's really, you kind of kick something off there that has been, you know, depending on who you are, some people might find it negative. It has both positive and negative, right? Like any kind of, I think I would say that about any technology in the world, right? That you can use it for good or evil, so to speak. So Adrienne, I'm going to throw to you. What questions around that sort of like early moments, tipping? Let's dive into that first before we move forward.
Okay. I actually just want to go back. Yes, like one of the first things you said
even
was
back.
like go back even further. When you talked about the origin story, and you were talking about there was a Degen channel. Can we just reminisce? There was a Degen channel someday before there was Degen.
Degen, yeah.
Yeah. So there
point.
was
How funny is that?
Yeah.
It's interesting because the Degen, like, I never really, like, it was like a weird channel for me because I didn't understand what Degen meant when I first saw it. Like,
Wow.
I didn't know what like this
That's
was
funny.
like referring to. Like, I knew Wall Street Bets and that kind of made sense, but Degen as like a concept. So I think Warpcaster, whoever did that, like Dan, I'm not sure who named the channel, because before,
It was Dan. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess he was aware of like there's this word called Degen and there's a group of Degens, because I was definitely not aware of all of that. And then, but I did see I think somebody like added me to the channel or like suggested the channel to me or something like that. So I was in there, and then I figured this is like Wall Street Bets, but nothing is really happened. Like nothing was happening in there until basically December, I think. And so that's when I guess, things kind of kicked off. Things started to get a little bit more bullish. So people were like more inclined to like, okay, let's do some degen things. Whereas like we were kind of coming out of like the bear for like quite a while. So I think the enthusiasm was kind of low in that channel. Plus, I think a lot of people on Farcaster have come kind of from like the DeFi world of like building, and they kind of have this personality on there of like, I'm a builder, I'm in the space, like, you know, I'm serious, I'm doing things, like, let's collab, let's partner. And so I think like showing your this alter ego that I think almost everybody has, well, maybe not everybody, a lot of people do definitely have it, where they like do degen things, kind of like, yeah, that's my other persona, but this is like, this is my serious one. And I think that changed for some reason in December. And now I think it's become kind of like a cool thing, almost like counterculture in a way.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And I always considered myself a part-time degen, and I would joke about that because I would, you know, dabble in meme coins and things like that and trading, but very minimal and just sort of for fun. And because that's the way I learn. I learn things by doing them. But it's been definitely tapping more into that aspect of myself due to this. So it's been kind of interesting. Adrienne, what other questions do you have before we move forward?
Yeah, so there's so much on the floor, but maybe we go from like the last time we spoke, which was pre-tipping, end of January, the once tipping, maybe just kind of like what just feelings on what tipping did to like the impact to Farcaster. So in terms of feed and Yasik, what are, you know, you're very chill and quiet, or just not sharing your personal thoughts. I mean, you're so kind of focused on that. So I'm just wondering how you feel about any of the either criticism about tipping, or how were you surprised at how it went off, or just kind of what are your feelings on on how tipping descended onto the feed in the
Yeah,
early days?
so I guess I've been kind of like living in a bit of a bubble, so I haven't really had like any negative interactions because my DMs and like everything that I interact with, or like like I usually just check notifications on things that I write, and now I haven't even had the chance to really do that, but initially that's
Oh
what
my
I was
God,
doing.
you posted your notifications, like a screenshot of your notifications one time.
Made me feel
Yeah.
so much better.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought my bad. Okay.
I was like,
I feel better
I
now.
DM'd you have gotten back to me, and I want to know why.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't even know. I'm trying to get through them today. So I kind of blocked off because there's on Farcaster or on Warpcaster, you can do like only people that you follow can message you. So now I clicked that. Before it was on like people that you follow and also recommended. So like a lot of people were just kind of flooding in, which is cool. And I want to go back to that, but I need to figure out a system to kind of like better organize and filter things and make because like the whole like everything that has been a part of Degen has come, like a lot of it has come from the community, like liquidity mining, like the distribution of airdrop one, like the logarithmic function to kind of even things out, that came from Vaj, from Supercast. So like everybody has had like really great ideas, so I do want to like yeah, basically have like a good filter for those. But anyway, yeah, I guess what was the question again about? Oh yeah, about the whole feed.
Yeah, like how are you experienced? So there's some people who have been pretty pushed back on sort of degen tipping culture because it kind of changed the feed quite a bit. Other people love it. And now I think that we're getting to a point where some of that's being figured out from the top level of spam filtering and things like that. So it's getting better in general. But have you felt any pressure to make any changes based on that negativity, or are you seeing any of that, or is it more your heads down building and you're not really seeing that?
Yeah, I haven't really had any comments from anybody. I think maybe Dan had like a few posts, so those are like the ones where I try to react and like be like, well, we shouldn't. Yeah, try and like make sure that the community knows that we're not aligned with like farming and like just yeah, like begging for points or like doing like weird kind of things. So I think we have been trying to do like a little bit of like disqualifying certain accounts that are just like pretty blatantly farming. So yeah, definitely the feed. I mean, it's like I think it's like a tough problem because any sort of like content site, like any social media sort of site like Reddit, I think they rely pretty heavily on like moderators. So I don't know how like all these other sites work, but I know that like Facebook for sure they employ like a whole team of moderators and things like that. And I'm sure there's also AI. And so I'm kind of thinking of like the warp, like Farcaster at the protocol level, it stores some very basic information like your casts and like your basic reactions and things. And so a lot of stuff is now being delegated to sort of like the client. And so like there's this also like this middle layer where I kind of see Degen fitting in a sense where you also need like feed curation and like filtering and like moderation and all that kind of stuff. And so potentially I could see maybe Degen even helping with that a little bit if we do decide to do like a little bit more machine learning on the casts or some kind of like AI or I don't know. I don't know what would be the right direction. Or just getting like people have been writing to me, like there's some people that I kind of trust and they basically send me a list of like different accounts that are just like yeah, like these have to be disqualified. And so that's almost like a moderator just kind of like disqualifying things. And so that might help a little bit to signal and get out, like, you know, kind of, I don't know, move the noise out a little bit. But yeah, it's a tough problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
so,
sure.
Do you have people helping you?
So I've been working solo for like the first 3 months, and now, yeah, somebody's joining me. Like they've already kind of started. Not gonna like announce exactly until they're like full time. Not gonna announce. They have some other like obligations, but they're, you know, it's another founder, and yeah, I think it's gonna be really great. I've known him for a while, so like there's a lot of trust, and yeah, I think that that's going to be great to kind of like move things forward. And he'll probably take one side of things, I'll take the other side of things, kind of split things up, and then yeah, just try and like turbocharge everything.
Because I've
That sounds
noticed.
amazing. That's
Yeah, 'cause I
I have to
noticed-
say, I was going to ask you before, like, how do you have somebody that you bounce things off of? Because having a co-founder for me has been everything, and having like Adrienne to be able to, just even make sure my perspective is clear and things like that. So, have you up to now? Do you have somebody that you've been using like that, or has it been mostly just you kind of making the calls?
No, I would say that I think I've been pretty good at just kind of, I guess, speaking with other people. For sure, there's like a couple of people that I try to do like weekly calls with. I think there's like 2 right now. And there's definitely some people in the community, like for sure, Wake is one of those people, which like anything, I try to respond to him as quickly as possible. And I even kind of feel like our integration should be like closer somehow. But that's a really important person that always brings things that he kind of feels should be changed. And there's all type, like I kind of know, like when I see something pop up, there's Whelp. He works at Rainbow Wallet. He's very technical because he's like a technical lead out there. But he's also doing like a ton of support. He has a ton of experience just kind of leading projects and like figuring out all that kind of stuff out. So like for sure, he's somebody that I turn to. There's a ton of people actually. Like I try to, like there's Alex from Pearl. We try to meet up every once in a while. So there's just a bunch of different people that I think have been really helpful, and that's the cool thing. Like everybody has been really helpful, and yeah, that's great. That's helped out a lot. Like there's so many people I could probably name, and they all kind of like filter different ideas, give me their ideas, their opinions, and then I try and like mix them all together into like the soup and like produce something out of that.
That's great to hear.
There's a line about Scenius here.
That's the Scenius. I was going to say that's the Scenius.
So in a non-Scenius, you may need a co-founder and a whole team. In a Scenius, like these are people who aren't kind of formally, but everyone's kind of bouncing ideas off each other and helping. So,
it's funny because I had asked in the founders channel, this was back in probably like January, February, I asked about advisory boards and if people had them, if they thought they were useful, all this stuff. And then I realized that the founders channel is probably the best advisory board in the world. And we didn't need anything more formal because there's so many amazing folks who just will, if you have even doing just that, like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What are your thoughts? You get so much gold from people who are invested already in what you're doing because they want to see you succeed. You want to see them succeed. And it seems like that's kind of what you've developed sort of organically, which is really cool. But it's good to hear that you have someone else coming on to like help you, shoulder this growth that has been insane.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
And we are having some issues with our stream, but it seems that we're live on YouTube. We're just not live on Unlonely. I don't know why. Very weird, but we'll figure that out later. But we're live
on YouTube. Yeah, not on Unlonely.
This is why we have backup plans now. We have backup plans,
and we'll be on chain forever.
On chain forever.
I think and just going back, the reason I was asking is I've noticed in your posts you say we a lot, like, and I kind of was curious: is there actually people helping you who that we means, or is it kind of the way you think about just even Degen being collective, not I?
Yeah, I don't know. I think somebody suggested it, and at first I was doing a lot of eyes, and then I realized that it is sort of like decentralized in a way, like a lot of people are suggesting things, and so I kind of felt like we makes sense. And now that this person is basically joining, I would announce it. I just don't know if he's comfortable with it yet. So like whenever he's ready, I'll do it. And so. Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of using that. Like we totally makes sense at this point, but there's also, like I mentioned, like all these different community members who are also like very vested in Degen. Like some of them have like very big positions and like big bags. So like I feel like that also helps a lot because they have like a vested interest, but they're also very into the community. Otherwise, they probably would have sold a lot earlier. So I think it makes sense to kind of like just put us under like an umbrella because everybody is kind of contributing and yeah, it definitely it's kind of like I don't know, like in coding, you have Linus Torvald, who main guy behind the Linux kernel, and then he was having the same sort of issue where people were just like, they wanted to push in all this code, all these updates, but he's one person and he can't take code updates from 1,000 people. So he ended up inventing Git, and there's probably other reasons why he created it, but one of the reasons he definitely mentioned was Git was a great way to do this, because then you have all these pull requests, and basically he has like his like generals or whatever you want to call them, and he has maybe 5 people that he really trusts in the coding world, and then those people have 5 people that they really trust, and so these pull requests, they bubble up, and finally they make it into like the main repository. And I think that's a really cool structure, the way he because this is like a big problem that he solved for himself, and he had it for like years and years and years. And so in sort of like the DeFi world, I think we have DAOs, but they don't really have the bubble up. I guess you can kind of delegate things and things like that, but it's not really like the same mechanism. And but I think the way we've been doing it has been kind of similar, with ideas have been bubbling up, and so that's really cool.
That is cool. That's a great comparison. I hadn't thought about the GitHub, like that type of approach is so smart in this kind of world, like this decentralized approach where you do have, and that to me has been really interesting. And we talked about that last time too, was seeing people sort of run with their own idea that relates to Degen, whether that's even just art or creating Degen DAO or creating, all these things, Dracula coming in and incorporating Degen and all these different like independent things that all kind of help the whole ecosystem grow. And it's really a lot of that's happening permissionlessly, where you don't even know it's happening. And that's, which is so funny to me, where you would never see that in a traditional corporate world, right? Where all of that would be so locked down and you wouldn't be able to do anything like that. But I think that's why we see such fast growth and expansion and scaling right now in Degen, is because of that permissionless nature. So that's pretty amazing. Adrienne, what other questions did you have before we move to like Degen Chain? Because that's a whole other animal.
Let's go to the chain.
All right. I want to show a couple of casts from last week. Last week, it feels like a million years ago. This was when you announced it. Degen Chain, we're live. I'm sorry, it was 12 days ago. It's more than a week ago. It's like ancient times. We're live. Degen L3 is up and running. More info coming soon on degen.tips. A big thank you to Syndicate for making this chain happen. Also, a special shout out to Conduit and Airstack for the tremendous work behind the scenes. More details, check this out. And then we had this from Syndicate. Today, we're excited to announce the launch of Degen Chain and L3 for the Degen community. Built with Arbitrum Orbit, base for settlement, and any trust for DA. The chain's native gas token is Degen, making it one of the first community tokens with its own L3. And then we had this from Base. Degen is pioneering the future by launching one of the first L3s on Base. L3s are app chains which deliver lightning fast transactions because they settle on L2s like Base instead of connecting directly to Ethereum. A new on-chain internet demands new models for scaling, and L3s utilize the power of L2s in new ways. And lastly, and then we'll talk about all this. Within 24 hours of launching Degen Chain, 2 million plus transactions, $1 million plus bridged, 24,000 plus active addresses, 3,700,000 plus blocks, 0.1 second average block time, first VRF on chain, dozens of devs deploying contracts. Amazing. So let's dive into that. For those who may not understand, what is an L3 and why did you decide to go in this direction? Talk a little bit about this decision to launch Degen Chain.
Yeah, so I think this was sort of brought up to me by Lotto PGF, and they made the Powerball frame, and we had a meeting, and they were at some kind of conference, not ETH Denver, but somewhere else. And later on, they were at ETH Denver, and then we were just sort of discussing how Powerball was basically spending $300 a day on running the frame because they wanted to do everything on chain. they had like this verifiable randomness smart contract or some sort of technology that they've been working on for quite a while. And so they kind of used it for the front end. And so like on the surface, it looks like just a simple like kind of lotto game, but like under the hood, they actually have been doing this for like quite some time, like even a couple of years, maybe, I don't know. And they've been kind of moving it from chain to chain to chain, and they haven't found a good home for it. And finally, they found a cool use case, and they were like, well, it's too expensive on base. Could you maybe do this L3? And it kept coming up in the conversation. And that's kind of like the genesis. I wasn't convinced at all, but they sort of convinced me. And then I started thinking about it in terms of like an ecosystem, in terms of like maybe like a Google Play Store, but like a Degen Play Store, or like something like that. And I was thinking, well, that makes a lot of sense for all these apps to kind of be encapsulated in this one place. And sort of the way I've been framing it is kind of like this would be like the Las Vegas of blockchains. So maybe not so much in terms of gambling, but in terms of like having fun, bridging some funds over, and basically being able to use it just on fun things. And you're fine if you kind of come back home to base without your funds, but at least you had a good experience. So yeah, so that was sort of like the whole idea. And like technically, the only thing that was really worth solving for them was the transaction fees. Those were way too high. On the L3, we can do them for a lot cheaper. So technically from that side, that's like the main thing. And then they also wanted to sort of have like these pre-compiles, which I had never heard of before, but I guess, that kind of allows you to, instead of doing like a smart contract deployment, you could basically customize the chain and have those functions like at the native level, sort of like native to the blockchain. So now like we're kind of like investigating this, and Syndicate has really been doing like all the work, I would say, in terms of technical. But there are a lot of options for basically customization. And so we could offer some sort of customization that, for instance, Base won't offer, because they cater to like such a wide variety of apps and Uniswaps and Zoras and OpenSeas and whoever else. Whereas we might cater to like more indie developers, maybe startups, people who are building like games, like fun applications. And so there might be like definitely Farcaster is a big part of that. So we could definitely do more customization on that front and make it like a better environment for devs to build on for degens basically. So I think that offers like a lot of potential that's still kind of like hasn't been unlocked.
I think, was it even Jesse who talked about kind of how there's going to be so many L2s for different communities? I don't remember if it was Jesse on or one of our other guests, but it was almost like every community will have its own L2, and that's fine. And it's almost like now because you can target communities and maybe build specific functionality or customizations. I don't know. Yes, a question for you though. When you're building an L3, I assume for the first time, as a developer, are there libraries, open source, like patterns? Like, do you know, where do you start from?
Yeah, so like I haven't been involved on the development at all. So that's actually like nice, because I could focus on like all these partnerships and things like that. So it's been Syndicate. So like the two big companies are obviously like Conduit for rollup as a service. And so that's the company that we're kind of using under the hood. There's also Caldera, and they're really good as well. I don't know which one has been around longer or anything like that, but they both have really great offers. And I think there's going to be a lot more rollups as a service coming out. Like this is kind of like a hot sector or whatever. And Syndicate is really like kind of like, I would say rollup as a service is almost like AWS or Google Cloud. And then like Syndicate is more like a Vercel, like a Heroku, where they pair a lot of different things together. So they did the bridge. They figured out like, okay, let's go with Decent, and Decent is doing our bridging. And they're coordinating and figuring out how to do everything there. Block Scout has the Explorer, so that was kind of standard approach to do, but I know there's some customizations that can be done there as well. So yeah, they're pairing and doing all the like different pieces. And even for like the bridging, now we're having some issues where there's a 7-day wait period that's adding a lot of friction. People don't want to bridge. So like Reservoir, they put
What
together
is
like
that about? I saw someone talk about that, saying that it takes 7 days to bridge from, I guess,
To
Degen
go
L3
back.
to base.
To go back. Yeah.
yeah. So
Why?
that's just the way the bridging is sort of like implemented. I guess there's sort of like the smart contracts or something technically where basically they need to wait 7 days to make sure that the funds are there, and then they can safely bridge them over. I don't know the details. I know that when you go from base to Ethereum, I think it's basically the same thing if you do the bridge.
Yeah.
So it feels like that's sort of like a standard approach, but we are working with some like really like some of the biggest companies right now, which we'll probably announce soon. Like one really big one that will allow us.
Feel free to drop some alpha. We're not going to stop you. We won't
Yeah,
tell. We won't tell. No one will tell.
Until it happens, I guess. But yeah, yesterday we had a conversation, and they had a really good, really well thought. Like it's way over my head. Like I'm technical, but like I'm not as technical as these guys. So they really know like bridging and all these kind of things. So I think Decent is going to be working with them to kind of create a new solution, which might mean that we know when you bridge to Degen right now, you have wrap Degen. So there might be a different token actually instead of the wrap Degen. So that's going to be kind of challenging because people have created liquidity pools and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to have to set up like a smart contract to kind of take that and put it into the new kind of token. But once we figure it all out, like the whole experience should be really great, and there won't be the 7-day waiting period. There won't really be need for like liquidity, I think, on both sides. I don't know. I don't remember, but it's going to be cool. So
I did, it was really easy to bridge to the chain. Very smooth. Everything worked very easily. I had no issues. And then mostly right now it's been meme coins on the chain with a few other apps and things like that. So not too much to do yet. And I think it's great that you're doing a deploy on Degen week, because I think that will help to push some other development there. But I was surprised at how easy it was, because I've had times where I've had to bridge things. I remember way back in the day, I'm talking 2 years ago, so ancient times, bridging from Polygon might have been the worst experience ever. Like, I haven't done it in a long time, but it was awful. And so this, to me, like how far we've come, it's gotten better and better to bridge. But I think a lot of that PTSD for people with bridging might come from the olden days. But it was, at least going there very easy. I haven't tried to come back with anything. I've just kind of left what I bridged over there, because I figured I'm going to use it. But one of the things we did last week was I played poker with Ted in Club Ted, and we had to send Degen on Degen Chain in order to play. That's what seeded the game. So even, finding little ways to incorporate, I thought that was really fun.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I talked to Ted, and I don't know. She has a very funny personality to me. I don't know. I always crack up because I was telling her about the Degen chain, and she's like, "Whoa, what was this Degen chain? Like, what's going on?" And she's like, because she was telling me about the poker. She's like, "Okay, all right, I'm gonna do this on. I'm gonna do the whole poker thing on the Degen chain." And I was kind of like, if it's easier for you to do it on base or whatever, just it's fine, go with that. She's like, no, we're doing this on Degen Chain, like absolutely, like out of the question. So it was kind of funny for me. But
and so that means she had a whole bunch of people who bridged for the first time from the game who hadn't bridged yet. So there was a little bit of friction, but it also got them to finally, move some things over. Finally, it was like 3 days after it started, or a week after it started. But so yeah, that was pretty cool, that dedication. Adrienne.
So this is another Scenius characteristic. It's rapid exchange of tools and techniques. So as soon as something new comes out, people in the scene are just so quick to adopt it, give feedback, try it out. Yeah. And we talked about this. This is the way they're running Farcon this year, which is kind of dog fooding everything. It's Farcaster native. And it does, it's like we talked about this last week. It adds a little friction because we have to do everything for the first time and try things out, but it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
experiment.
We do have a question in the chat. Degen Chain is fast and cheap. Let me see if I can show this. Ooh, I can.
Oh.
Thinking out of the box, would it be possible for Degen Chain to rival Tron in payment remittance to market? And I'm not sure if you know if that is something similar in terms of speed and things like that.
Yeah, I have no idea actually. I don't know what Tron's up to. I think they kind of had like a weird model or something where they copied Ethereum, or I don't know. Like I remember something kind of weird going on over there where people didn't kind of dislike the Tron chain, but I guess they're going. It's happening over there. Yeah, I have no idea to be honest. Like where we could take this right now. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tough for me to answer that one right now. I'm not like deep in the woods on that one.
And it does seem like, we talk a lot. I've heard a lot of discussions about L2s being helpful for gaming, for Web3 gaming, but it seems the L3s, and I guess the experience with Powerball is a good example there in terms of they couldn't even do it on the L2. It was too expensive for those micro transactions. So when you get into gaming even, that's where you have lots of microtransactions, and it seems like the L3 is the only way to really make that sustainable. So do you anticipate some development like that? Has anyone talked to you about things that they're working on that they think will benefit from the Degen L3?
Yeah, no, I think the low cost transactions are like a huge benefit because they're like a millionth of a penny, I think, versus like 1 to 10 pennies on base. So that's like a huge gap between the L3 and the L2. So like if you are building a game, I think that's like a perfect, I mean, just like any sort of like Degen style fun type of game, you're going to have a much better experience in terms of transaction fees. And that just makes it, because like a lot of the things that people might have thought of, okay, I'm going to build this off chain, that kind of allows you to now think, well, I'll just build it on chain instead. And it just like offers a much better experience, I think. So that's like a big positive. In terms of like people that I've been talking to, yeah, there's a ton of people building everything. I haven't had time to go through all of the different apps or dApps or whatever, but definitely deploy on Degen Week is going to help me kind of go through things. I have to kind of sit down and do that. Definitely, I think somebody's connected me with the person from Crypto the Game. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. And yeah, there's all sorts of different characters that have kind of been messaging or potentially
characters.
Yeah, I mean, there's some cool people out here. Like the other day, we got a DM from Pac-Man from Blast. He just wrote GM, and then I haven't heard back since. But that's super cool. Like for me, that guy's like legendary. Basically, a lot of the stuff we did at Degen has kind of been taken from him. So the points meta, even the fonts, the leaderboards. Like I really think he nailed it. But just in general, I think he's like very, I don't know. He's. I
remember you talking about that you were inspired by Uniswap and Blur.
Yeah.
When you were thinking about launching the coin, and I think that was interesting. And now I definitely see more of the comparison with something like Uniswap, where you have now the chain itself. So you have this sort of protocol layer, if you will, which I think is interesting, and not necessarily it really wasn't a direction you thought you were going, but actually you kind of designed it in a way that it could be done that way. So it's interesting that kind of worked out, where you have this sort of inspiration and it ends up going exactly there.
I think for Uniswap, the nice thing was that all of their smart contracts are open source. So that gives you a lot of code to kind of copy and paste, and you kind of feel like, all right, this is probably audited or peer reviewed by somebody. So if I copy and paste this thing, probably nobody's going to get hacked, or, so it's kind of safe if you do that. So for the token, I definitely kind of looked at also their tokenomics. And then for the airdrop code, I also took their kind of airdrop code and modified it a little bit, but try not to do too much. So I think from like the technical side, it was really good to kind of look at Uniswap and what they're doing, and kind of reuse their code. I'm happy that it's all open source.
Very cool. Adrienne, did you have another question before I move to some other things?
No, go ahead, move. Let's
Okay.
keep going.
I want to talk about this, which is tipping on Twitter. I still don't know how I feel about this. Tipping in Degen is now supported by Idris. It's a browser extension that enables you to tip profiles on X seamlessly. Shout out to the team for integrating this feature. So I thought this is really interesting. I'll never use it because I'm trying to get away from Twitter as much as possible. But have you seen any activity there? And what did what was were you aware they were going to do this, or did they just do this sort of permissionlessly?
Mache from Kiwi News kind of connected us together. And so, yeah, they've been creating this sort of like tipping mechanism, like this tipping browser extension that works on Twitch, and it works on Twitter, and probably works on a couple other places. And actually, that was an idea that I was kind of thinking about doing for Warpcaster, the desktop client, like create a browser extension, and then Warpcaster is going to integrate a tipping button, so I could just do that myself. But then I kind of decided I'm not going to do that. So they're doing it. I think they just have their own sort of ecosystem, their own community that likes to do this tipping on Twitter and Twitch and across all these platforms. So them having Degen is like a big plus, I would say. Like, I'm really happy that they integrated us. And so it kind of like spreads Degen to more places, and more people can kind of use it. But yeah, like I've also had suggestions of, well, maybe we should do the tip allowances on Twitter instead of, just to kind of like branch out and become like bigger. And I was thinking about that for a while, but then I decided against it, that like we're super bullish on Farcaster. That's where the community sort of is. And also Twitter, yeah, it's kind of like a dumpster a little bit. So especially like crypto Twitter, it's really bad. There's a lot of scammers, and like farming is already pretty bad on Farcaster, and we're trying to get that under control. And so bringing that to Twitter would just ruin it. It would be so difficult. And it's also like the APIs are closed off now, or like semi-closed off. It's not what it used to be. So it makes it like developing on Twitter is like a much more, like, it's a difficult experience now compared to like Farcaster, which is super easy. So
Right.
So yeah, like we're not going to go there, but like Idris, or however you pronounce it, they've done it. And if we can expose Degen to a wider community, then I think that's great.
It's funny because I had this, my first reaction was like, ew, no, I'm not doing that. That's, that'll take away from Farcaster. And then I went, wait a minute, maybe it will actually send some of the farmers back to Twitter. If they can just do it there. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe this is a good idea, because that might solve a problem of like, the sort of low effort replies and Twitter and tip farming. So I don't know, but we'll see if it takes off. I have a feeling it might be too late, because I think, but you never know. It might be something that takes off and solves a problem and brings some new folks in. I'm not sure. Adrienne, did you have something? You look like you were.
Oh.
Yeah. I didn't want to. I just want to cut
Adrienne's
you off.
She's just brewing.
She's brewing. I have lots of other questions, so I'm just.
I have random questions too, but they're all like kind of off topic. And
okay. I do have a few from folks I had asked if they had any questions for you. So I've got a few, and this is from Bricks Bounty. I'm curious, developed season 3 of the airdrop is at this point, or whether it's a work in progress, and how it might be tied to activity on Degen Chain. Is there going to be any shift? So we're still in season 2 of airdrop, correct?
So I think Yes to Crypto in the comments, I noticed he kind of did an asterisk and said airdrop 3. So yeah, it's kind of weird because we have airdrop 1 that was all done in one felt swoop. And then there's airdrop 2, which I've kind of divided into different seasons. Right. And then there's going to be airdrop 3, which is 30% of the total token supply, I think, or 25, or maybe 25 actually. So that's the biggest one. And yeah, so airdrop 2 was definitely focused on tipping. Like that was the new thing. And airdrop 3, I don't know, like there's no idea for that. Like for sure tipping still needs to be sorted out. There's still a lot of funds left in airdrop 2. So I think airdrop 2 has like a long way to go, like probably a few months of runway. And then we can maybe, but tipping will still always be a part of everything. Like I want to keep tipping going for as long as possible, but just clean it up. And then airdrop 3, yeah, we'll see. I guess a lot of it's just going to come from the community, I think.
Okay.
Oh, and that's really interesting.
Related.
So you really,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's like, because one of my questions I did have for you was just kind of about roadmap and how you think about it in terms of how much of it is clear versus how much are you figuring out based on community and kind of pivoting. So season 2 locked in, we know what that is. With I guess airdrop 2, airdrop 3, there's an amount that needs to be distributed, but you don't know what that mechanism will be, what it might look like. And
no, it's
that's
not.
a really interesting place to be.
Yeah, I never plan anything because things change so fast. And then like even with the L3, that kind of came from the community. Tipping was a little bit kind of like, I guess, my own idea, but then also like bouncing it back around people. And yeah, so I think a lot of these things kind of like everything's going to change probably in a few months, I think in a good way. So at that point, something else might come up. Maybe there's something, I don't know. It's tough to say. But yeah, I think having a roadmap, first of all, it gives people like room to speculate. And so I don't want to do that because then like they're like, oh, you said something and then the price goes up or down or something. So I don't want to give room for speculation. So if you buy Degen, you're buying it based on your own kind of thoughts and not something that I kind of promised and didn't do. And then also, it's just not possible because I never had a concrete plan with Degen. And now like things are forming and things are like being more concrete, but yeah.
So just one more question then about the tipping season. So you've said farming will be penalized and people who are kind of farming won't get it. So everyone's doing the tipping in the feed completely off chain. So goes into a database. And then when it comes down to, okay, before the claim, you'll run some algorithm, probably some something automated, something as well, human interjected, to make decisions about, okay, you might have received these tips during the tipping, but you don't actually have right to claim them. How's that been going?
Yeah, so we banned like 14,000 different users based off like a really simple filter. But then also we've been sort of like banning people, just like going through the top, basically, looking at the leaderboard, looking at the top recipients, and then some people kind of like look at it and say, well, that's clearly somebody who's farming, and they like people will do like some pretty like heavy analysis. They'll go into Telegram groups where these people are just talking about how to farm Degen, screenshot it. They'll so there's a lot of like people do some investigative work, but I think a lot of times it's enough to just go on the profile and like look at it, and it's like, okay, that's not working. So yeah, I think somebody sent me a list this week, so I have to take a look, and that's just part of like moderation and making sure that there's quality. And then of course at the Warpcaster level, you have also moderation in channels, and some some channels are doing a really good job of just being active, and then that kind of also decreases those posts or those casts from like kind of gaining a lot of tips because they kind of get hidden or the Warpcaster algorithm doesn't show them. So yeah, but definitely we've been doing it, and we should make it better, but just haven't had time.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I do want to ask this question because I thought this was interesting. Now that we have sort of the L3 as well, given that tipping allowances are based on the base L2 Degen, and that bridging back to Degen to base takes roughly a week. What's the plan for equalizing the value of L2 Degen with L3 Degen? As an active and enthusiastic user of the L3, it feels kind of sad that activity there really isn't rewarded and carries more cost. So what is your thoughts on that? Is there any adjustment being made? Or I guess a better question, let me jump back a little bit, is in terms of how the tip allocation is created, like what goes into that, and are you now going to start considering what people have on the L3?
So I don't think so. Like I thought about this just briefly, but it seems like, for instance, with Blast, the L2, what they're really doing is they have like native yield built into the chain. And so it's kind of like an interest rate. And so when interest rates go up, they even, I think even Pac-Man kind of said it's kind of like this interest rate hike. And so, of course, money sort of flows into the place where you kind of have this interest rate environment. And so that's why. And so, but kind of thinking more deeply on that, I kind of thought, well, that's interesting. They're kind of like incentivizing TVL. So having like just a ton of value locked in there, and then I think the idea kind of for Blast, at least kind of just looking at that mechanism, is that okay, then like almost like trickle down economics. So like there's all these people who have basically locked in there, and now if developers build things, then somehow those funds will trickle into these app builders, and maybe that makes sense. I don't know, but I think with Degen we're taking the opposite approach where we're not incentivizing people to bridge to Degen. Like that's the whole point of like organic growth, is to not do that. And I think up until this point, it's been pretty organic, I would say. Like, yeah, of course there's farming, and of course people see Degen now as like valuable, so they want to be a part of it. But I think not incentivizing people to bridge to Degen will foster more of that organic kind of growth. And like really, and then if we do want to give Degen to somebody, rather than give it to people who just bridge, and that doesn't really add value in itself. So like give it to the people who are building on Degen, let them build something valuable so that people want to bridge over. So that's why I was kind of confused. Like why are people bridging to Degen? There's nothing there. Like I didn't understand why there's 30 million bridged over in the first 2 days. That's kind of weird to me. But I guess people are building things, and things are kind of getting started, and they're hyped. They want to check it out, so that's cool. Definitely.
Some of us are really into provenance. I just know that's the reason for me and a lot of people that in the nouns community, for example, like we like being early. We like being so we'll go try things out and play around, or jump into these different meme coins that were really the only thing that was happening over on the L3, that first weekend, because it was easy, right? It's something easy you could do quickly. But I think that's probably what drove that first wave of like, we like being early. Let's just go play around and see what's what. If you hold CryptoKitties, then from December 2017, like me, then you might be a crazy person who likes to try things early. So yeah, I think that drove a little bit of that. But yeah, interesting though, thinking about rewarding the builders rather than just the people who are building the casino, rather than just the ones who are playing the games. So interesting.
Missionaries over mercenaries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think at some point, once people build things out, then we'll definitely try and reward the users for using these apps. Because for instance, like let's say you create an NFT marketplace, or you create some kind of like content site like Reddit or something. So building the platform is one thing, but then getting the users into that is another thing. So maybe then we can also incentivize certain programs for like, hey, there's this cool marketplace, there's this cool place, but it needs actual users to kind of get bootstrapped and started. So maybe once things are built, and maybe that's how this will work. Like we have the grant program, maybe some of those funds will kind of get utilized for them to kind of build, but also to distribute. So I think, there's a lot to do there.
I like that. I like that idea. I think that also then puts it back in the hands of the builder too, because they're going to want to bring users to them. I have a feeling that's exactly what will happen, is they'll take some of those funds and have it filter down to their users of their apps or whatever they build over there. Interesting. We have one. I'm going to ask Julie's question right here. And I'm going to ask and answer it. Will there be a cast action for small standardized tips to be given kind of privately? That's the part I can't answer, but the first part, Jolie, there's already a cast action to do that. That was created by, I think that was JTGI. I think it was the Paperboy one, where you can set a fixed amount or percentage one to cast, but it's not private. It is public. So you can use that cast action to do that right now. But have you thought about any kind of something similar to Warp's tipping, where it would be private, notified to the user, but not made public to everybody? Which I don't know if that's even been something that's been considered.
Yeah, I think there's stuff that can be done with tipping that way. For sure, a lot of it's kind of like client facing. So like Warpcaster might have to do some things, but yeah, maybe there's some
Right.
stuff you can do with frames or with the actions. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of these, it's cool that other people are building them. So if like there is like that space to build, I encourage other people to do it. That kind of takes the load off of us. But yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, I think Nick from One Confirmation actually mentioned Paperboy yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's really cool.
And it's seamless. It's very easy to set up, and you can either pick a set amount. So I have mine set for like 616 Degen, so that I can just click on that and it will notify in the replies as well. At first I didn't think it was notifying, but it is. Or you can set it for, I want to give away 10% of my allocation by just doing it so whatever, however you want to set it, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And again, that's that whole permissionless nature, which is pretty cool, which we saw some things like that happen. This also was really cool. Well, we've got this up, this swap frame. And this was a little bit of like being able to swap things. That was pretty cool. This might even be a whole different frame, actually, that I pulled up. Farcaster Degen Alpha. That's a whole other one. But he also had a swap frame. I mean, there's so many cool things. And then this, which actually Bolide is our CLP for this episode, they've created an app for trading meme coins, which is really cool. And Degen was the primary reason for them to do that. Like, that's the primary reason that they wanted to create that. So I've been, it's been pretty fun to see sort of all that development. And then I also want to make sure that you saw, let me see if I can find this now, some of these memes, because they may have missed you. I loved this one. I thought this was hilarious. Study the headwear, and you've got the, the whiff hat on layer 1. You've got the base, headphones on layer 2, and then you've got the Degen hat on layer 3. And I thought that was very clever. And also this as well, sort of the takeoff on "Are you winning, son?" And yes, we are all winning now. And then also this was really fun on on Degen Day is what they were, what it was being referred to as. That was the day the airdrop and the chain on the same day. So there was a lot of happiness. We've been chatting for a while. I don't want to hold you here forever. We could talk forever. I am sure that Adrienne has some fun questions. But I really liked this question. I want to show one last question from our thread that we had asked people.
I think this will be the last one too, because I have to hop
you probably
to
have to
call,
go too. Yeah. Loving, they said, I'd like to know about the bigger vision. We're doing a fascinating distribution experiment now. Then once it's distributed, what comes next? So we've talked a little bit about how the roadmap is sort of being created as we go. But like, what's next for you? And like, what are you thinking about from the bigger vision of Degen in general?
Yeah, so I think for now, like for liquidity mining, we've kind of extended that program, for instance, to run for quite some time. I think it should even run, because one thing that is worth mentioning is that after 4 years of the token kind of existing, we can start minting 1% of the total token supply. And so that's awesome, because then we could potentially incentivize employees, or part of that for sure.
And that was based on Uniswap's design, right?
Yeah, that's based on
you took that inspiration, which is great.
So they have 2% actually, but like we're, I thought, Uniswap's like the biggest company.
I don't know.
So 1%,
We'll see.
1%. Yeah, so we'll see. But I think 1% is like totally fine, and that will help to kind of, after 4 years, we can definitely keep going and incentivizing grants, incentivizing the team, doing whatever needs to happen. So getting to that 4th year, I think we can kind of get liquidity mining points to kind of stretch out. But at this point, the liquidity pools seem pretty well off. Like they don't probably need to be as incentivized as they once were. You're still earning fees. That's an incentive. So from Uniswap or from Aerodrome or forever. But anyway, we're keeping that around for a while. And then I think with tipping, that should probably be able to run also for a while. So probably the amount of degen that gets distributed in every season will go down. But I think that will be like a reoccurring thing, and we'll try and make it better. Of course, there's the L3, and there's so much to do there. So basically creating like a degen app store, or I don't know, just helping people build and make the ecosystem better. So definitely there's also like different routes for making revenue that we're kind of exploring. But right now we want to kind of just explore and get people to build and do that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's quite a lot. And even now, like I've been mentioning, I haven't had time to do this, I haven't had time to that.
Yeah.
Like on the surface, I think people won't see maybe too much happen in the next maybe few weeks. Well, there'll be stuff happening for sure, but a lot of the stuff we're doing is kind of back office, like setting up an entity, like, you know, do we do a foundation? Yeah. Do we do something else? Like where should the foundation be? Like Ethereum's out in Switzerland. Maybe that's a good idea. So like talking to like lawyers, filling out Excels and looking at PDFs. It's kind of like not the glamorous
this is the not
work.
Fun stuff. This is not the fun stuff,
yeah,
but it has to get done.
Yeah, but once it gets done, like I feel like we'll have a really good base, and we also kind of want to make sure that, you know, we are in this bull cycle, and it kind of feels like we don't want to lose the excitement as well, like bogged down in like needless kind of things. So like do all the things that need to be done, and then deliver value and try and do those like really low effort, high impact moves. And then potentially once those are kind of out of the way, like the low hanging fruit has kind of been picked, then kind of go after like, okay, do we build like this degen client? Do we do something else? I know, you know, the person coming on, he has some big ideas too. So like figuring out, okay, so now that we have an income stream, a revenue stream of some sorts, things are sorted out legally, you know, now like what can we do? But there's so much to do right now that we gotta, yeah.
It's exciting. And then next week is the deploy on Degen Chain, you said. So people should take a look there if you want to build something on the chain. And even though you say there's not a lot happening, it's like you're going to be quiet for a couple weeks. No, you're not. There'll be a ton happening.
Yeah, there's still a lot.
Whether you're doing it or not, and whether you're, you know, quiet in the background like a little duck with the what's going on under the surface. But I have a feeling that there'll still be a lot happening in the ecosystem. Adrienne, we're going to let Jacek go. Anything else that you want to mention real quick before he has to bolt?
Jacek, do you own a top hat?
I don't. I do not own a top hat. If you guys have one, bring it to FarCon. I'll
you're going to be at FarCon.
I'll be on.
That was one question.
There's a bounty.
Woohoo! Okay, got it. No problem. It's happening. Oh, we're absolutely bringing a top hat.
Perfect.
That will make that happen. Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Anytime that you want to come back, if you have something you want to chat about, we'd love to have you back, or just, you know, jump in our DMs and say, hey, can you make sure you mention this or whatever. We're always happy to support, you know, what you're building.
Awesome.
And that's for any Farcaster builders. So thanks so much. It's been amazing.
Down to come back. Yeah, like I love this is where it kind of like, this was one of the first shows that kind of featured Degen, so it's like special, you know. So yeah.
We like beating Bankless to the punch. It's kind of our thing. It's kind of the thing that keeps us going. Yeah. Is every time they're like, we're calling it early, I'm like, we called it earlier.
Yeah, perfect.
That's our new tagline. We called it earlier. So we want to thank you so much. I do want to mention really quick, Bolide. Thank you so much. Bolide is our sponsor for today's show. Smart mobile app makes trading easy. And we're just excited to have them on board. And thank you. And you can go trade your Degen right on there and swap easily on there. So go check that out. And be sure that you're following Jacek, because you want to make sure you don't miss any announcements about the deploy on Degen next week. And I'm excited to see what's going to come out of that. I'm just excited to see what people build. That's always fun for me to go try things out. So get building, people. And that is it. We will see you tomorrow. We are back tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. for another GM Farcaster. And we will see you then, everybody. Bye-bye.